Hello and welcome to the Global View on this Friday. Well, US economic growth for the third quarter has been revised downwards to 4.9% compared with the previous estimate of 5.2%. It was the fastest pace of expansion since the fourth quarter of 2021, but momentum appears to have faded in the final 3 months of the year as consumer spending weakens. The consumer spending element of GDP revised downward to 3.1% from 3.6%. Attention now turning to tomorrow's personal consumption expenditures data for November for a read on inflation. And new US jobless claims increased slightly last week, up to 205,000. The US 10-year yield, little changed at 3.88% after earlier falling to its lowest level since July, while the 2-year falling to 4.34%. The US dollar has eased to a 3-day low against most major currencies. The Aussie dollar up at 68 cents, its highest level since July. Now, meanwhile, fighting in Gaza has intensified, with Israel increasing its bombardment of the enclave while Hamas has fired rockets at Tel Aviv. This amid ongoing talks to find a resolution to the 11-week conflict. Well, for more on the macro picture and equity markets, with a particular focus on big tech, with the prospect of further regulation, and also examining some of those themes of 2024, I caught up with Brad Gastwirth, Chief Executive of Unearthing Opportunities.
There's a lot of regulatory concerns that we're facing right now. If you think about what the EU is doing, they're looking to punish mega cap again. It's really unclear what will transpire from that. But these countries want to try and capitalize on these mega cap companies. And the ones that aren't based in, that are US-based companies that are making revenue outside, they're trying to capitalize on. If you look at the cybersecurity side, there's obviously a lot of things going on there, from new hacks to the cyber attacks with the Israel-Hamas situation. You have the Chinese, looks like they're attacking Taiwan. There's a tremendous amount right now on the cyber side. So, there's a lot of regulatory concerns from different fronts, and ultimately, we got to keep watching out as investors.
Yeah, so you're referencing those geopolitical concerns, particularly with the prospect that those cyber attacks are likely to increase. How are corporations likely to deal with that into 2024, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's the most important question, Andrew. And if you look at what happened during COVID, you had significant spend increase on the cybersecurity side. So, it's obviously one of the first and foremost important items on any CEO or COO's board, because you need to protect your assets. And when you have digital assets, if it's information, employee information, customer information, or IP, you need to make sure it's protected. So you've already seen a significant increase in spend. That's not going to slow down, and you're going to continue to see that at a rapid pace.
So are you expecting perhaps one of the most important positions in a company to be those CISOs, those Chief Information Security Officers?
Yeah, I mean, they're very sought after. Now there's been a little bit more, not really, there's been more intelligence. You have more qualified candidates in that role. The one right now that we're really struggling to get placed are the AI professionals. So people in charge of AI, head of AI, at any of the large companies, you're very, very few pickings in terms of qualified candidates.
Yeah, I see you use an example here of MoveIt hacked there. What were the concerns? How did that play out?
Yeah, I mean, right now you saw a major breach, and when you see that, the SEC got involved. I think it was something like 7 million, people's information was taken. Whenever you have something at that magnitude, it draws a lot of attention. There's a lot that isn't really discovered by the public. And, there's a lot of, actually, this is one of the reasons why blockchain and Bitcoin did well in the early days, is a lot of the ransom from these hackers were paid in cryptocurrencies because it's untraceable. But there's, when they do come to light, it's a big, red eye. You have more people wanting to spend more on security, and it's the most important thing for sure.
Also, and you referenced this, those cyber attacks on Taiwan increasing. What are the likely ramifications of that if that continues into the new year?
Yeah, I mean, there's really heightened tensions with China and Taiwan. Clearly, China sees one China, which Taiwan is included, and Taiwan believes they're independent. Now, at some point, unfortunately, I think you see China, take in Taiwan like they did with Hong Kong. It's sort of a matter of when, not if. But right now, there's a lot of, I think there's benefits for Chinese not doing that, but it's a wild card. You don't know what's going to happen. But the news and the reports out there are on the hacking side that China is doing a tremendous amount of hacks into that region.
Brad, a lot of movement in the M&A space at the moment, the latest one being Warner Brothers and Paramount. How are you looking at activity in M&A?
Yeah, I mean, both stocks sold off a little bit on the deal being announced. Ultimately, I do think that you see more independent content publishers or content providers get acquired. It was one of my best themes at the company I started over a decade ago, and it's still a top theme that with the proliferation of smart devices, tablets, smartphones, people do consume more and more content. With that, content becomes king, and you have a very high demand for those content providers.
And in the acquisition area, of course, you had Microsoft moving along with Broadcom as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have, if you look at those mega deals, the Microsoft Activision, the Broadcom VMware, I mean, these are big, big, big acquisitions. And, the biggest question are do they get regulatory approval? Are there going to be these concerns and humps? There's a lot that goes through with it. There's big, penalties that the companies pay if it doesn't go through. I think this is good for overall environment. When you see M&A activity, it's a more positive for markets. These mega caps at some point do get broken up. So, they're going to continue to bite and buy, these companies. And these are no small companies by any means. But you're going to see at some point the government step in and think they're going to be too big.
Brad, company specific, taking a look at Tesla, which of course we've often spoken about, of course, it's got issues with its autopilot, so there's a recall there. That's a big issue for the company to deal with. Also, I guess the rollout with its Cybertruck. And interesting also that reports that the US is considering tariff hikes on Chinese EV manufacturers. What are the implications of that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a day that doesn't go by where Tesla isn't in the news. On the Consumer Reports information, the stock sort of shook it off in terms of the information out there. There are certainly concerns with some of the technology. They have the best technology on the EV side by far. I mean, they are a technology company. But if you look at a lot of these other moving parts, there's a lot, like you said, with on the Chinese, with the de-incentivizing purchasers from purchasing. If you look at the U.S. side, that's the reason why Tesla cut prices to be able to get the purchasers to get the tax credit. At some point they go away, and when you cut price to stir demand, that's not good for profit. So I think the valuation is still way ahead of itself. I love the technology and the vision of the company. It's just too rich to be buying at this level, in my opinion.
Okay. Now, Brad, one of the big themes, of course, for 2023 was AI. Expectations, of course, that's only going to continue into the new year. You had investments, particularly from some of the larger companies such as Salesforce, Microsoft, Alphabet, investing in that space. What are your expectations in 2024?
I think you're going to continue to see record investments into AI from every company. From the mega cap, they're going to lead the way, as you've been seeing with Microsoft's $10 billion investment into OpenAI. You're going to see significant investments across AI because it's really the biggest transformation we've seen since compute. So it's a trend that won't stop, and it's going to shock and cause a lot of waves throughout the investment cycle.
All right, so look at AI and also that machine learning, particularly as it applies to financial services too, I guess. Brad, let's talk about those companies that are likely to benefit then next year. What are you looking at?
So if you look at AI, I still like the mega cap companies. Microsoft is a great investment. They still have significant upside to numbers. When they offered their suite, they increased prices by like around 30%. When you add the AI component, that's just going to boost revenue and margins. I like that company still here. Salesforce.com is another one I've been talking about. They've raised guidance and beat expectations. Their AI side with their acquisition a few years ago with business analytics is doing incredibly well. If you look at Adobe, it's another beneficiary of AI. I think those three, you can obviously look at Amazon and what they're doing behind the scenes. The large cap are the ones that I'm sticking to. Google, Alphabet is another that absolutely will benefit during this cycle.
Yeah, and of course, some of those companies you're mentioning there certainly have benefited this year. They included in the Magnificent Seven. Brad, given those outsized performance that we've seen, certainly in the first half of this year, what do you see as potential in the Mag 7 for next year?
Yeah, so I think you're going to see a little bit of a little volatility, if not a lot of volatility, in the beginning of the year. I think you're coming off of, the S&P was super close to reaching an all-time high. It sold off after that. In terms of 2024, I think the first quarter will be quite tough. I think there's some crosshairs and some serious macro issues that the market certainly ignored. That being said, I still see investment pouring into the winners in AI, and a lot of those seven and the large cap are the winners. So I continue to think that Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet will do very well going into 2024 and exiting the year.
That is the view of Brad Gastwirth from Unearthing Opportunities out of the States. All right, so just a check of the market. Look, we are expecting a positive open, as you can see there, with SPI futures up around 0.1%. Stay with us. The open, just a couple of minutes away.